In the previous video in this series, I talked about the philosopher Hegel. He pointed the way across the line of despair into the land of relative truth, and many philosophers followed his lead. Now, like Hegel, the Impressionists, a group of painters in the 19th century, led other painters into that same land of relative truth across the line of despair. Now, when you look at a painting, it should communicate something to you. It should arouse an emotion within you. It's more than just a composition of light and spaces and lines and colors. It should say something to your spirit. It might be a scene that evokes a sense of heaven on earth, or it may cause more base sentiments that boil up from the pit of hell. Hi, I'm Chuck Livermore. I'm a Christian author and speaker. In this video, I'm going to show you the artistic basis for the modern world, as described in the book, The God Who Is There by Francis Schaeffer. Now, a primary question you may want answered is, what do artists have to do with our worldview in answering the most important questions about our life? After all, Schaeffer's book is not meant to be used as a textbook for the art appreciation courses at the local community college. To answer that question, let me talk briefly about the historical context in which these painters lived. I will then compare this to some contemporary examples so that you might understand the influence these artists had on society and their culture. In the 19th century, there weren't movie theaters or rock music festivals to entertain the public. One of the ways people stayed entertained was by visiting galleries and museums to see the latest paintings that the popular artists had done. Certain artists gained notoriety or even celebrity status in their careers. Like celebrities today, these pop stars were listened to when they spoke about topics that had nothing to do with their artistic accomplishments. They became famous for being famous. Just like people being influenced by the political views of their favorite movie star or pop singer, people in the 19th century were influenced by the worldviews of their favorite painters. As an example of how this works in our current situation, Taylor Swift recently endorsed Kamala Harris in the presidential race that is currently underway. We will soon find out if her endorsement has any impact on the election or not. But the question is put forth, why should anyone listen to Taylor Swift's opinion on who should be the U.S. president? I can't answer that, but the fact is many do. I agree with the recent Babylon Bee headline that satirized the pop star's endorsement, which stated, "Woman who made career singing about her bad choices endorses Kamala." Often pop stars and social media influencers give their opinions on politics, but there's no reason they should know any more about the economy or diplomacy than anyone else. We'll turn our attention back to the 19th century art world now, looking at two post-impressionists, Van Gogh and Gauguin. The first artist we will look at is Vincent van Gogh. Van Gogh, pictured here the young, beardless version of the tortured soul he was to become, was full of angst. He sought a universal, a way to make sense of all the disparate particulars he saw around himself. Having abandoned the land of absolutes and sojourned into relative truth, this proved to be an impossible task. He couldn't synthesize the theses and antitheses he observed in the world. After getting into an argument with Paul Gauguin, one of his contemporaries, Van Gogh, in a fit of rage, sliced off his own left ear. Soon after, Van Gogh, when no hope was left in sight on a starry night, took his life as lovers often do. Van Gogh, who had attempted to create a new artist-led religion, died in despair, never finding the universal he desperately sought. Van Gogh's sometimes friend and other times nemesis fared no better. Gauguin traveled to Tahiti in search of Rousseau's noble savage, the ideal life apart from civilization, communing with nature. His final grand masterpiece was titled What, Whence, Whither. In this painting, he sought to answer the great mysteries of mankind. He thought the painting answered the first question, what is mankind? On the right side of the painting, he shows the idyllic community by portraying a native family. In the middle of the painting, Gauguin exemplifies his idea of the noble savage with a man reaching towards the heavens. In Gauguin's mind, this answers, where did we come from? On the left side of the painting, Gauguin illustrates the answer to the third and final question, where are we going? We see an old woman sitting silently, possibly awaiting her death. A young woman sits by her, perhaps her caretaker. An odd-looking bird observes the same. After its completion, Gauguin told his patron that the painting was a philosophical work, comparable to the gospel. He also confessed that he had attempted to commit suicide after he finished the painting but failed. Gauguin did die mysteriously a short time after, possibly from a heart attack or perhaps an overdose of medicine. Paul Cézanne, 1839 to 1906, sought to find the universal in the geometric forms that underlie his painting. But unlike his contemporaries, Cézanne never despaired over his inability to find the universal, as far as Schaeffer was able to discover. Pablo Picasso, however, plunged deep into the land of relative truth. He took Cézanne's avant-garde style and turned it up to 11. His new style was called Cubism. In this painting, called Three Musicians, it is difficult to determine where one musician ends and another begins. Thus, it is not about three individual musicians. It is a representation of all musicians, or even of everything. Likewise, in the painting Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, pardon my French, I'm sure that sounded horrible to a native French speaker, Picasso moves from what might be recognized as a woman to a demonic representation inspired by the African masks that were popular in Paris at the time that he painted this. Looking from left to right, you move from the particular to the universal, which is the hideous demonic mask. Evidently, in this period of his life, Picasso didn't have a high regard for women. Picasso's painting had become so abstract it failed to relate to the real world. To this point, Picasso had created his own world and had become his own god. However, a few years later, Picasso returned very subtly to the real world when he fell in love. He wrote in the middle of the painting, J'aime Eva, or I love Eva. Because Picasso had fallen in love, he leapt back into the real world and put meaning that communicated to the observer back into his work. If Picasso had sought the universal, homogeneous truth by applying geometric forms to the world, Piet Mondrian took this idea to the extreme by reinterpreting the world as completely geometric. Mondrian had made a world in which his paintings could not be left alone to themselves, but the artist would have to design the environment with unique construction and furniture in which the painting would be placed. But any outside intrusion, such as someone walking in to look at the painting, would alter the environment and change the perception of the painting. Mankind had no place in Mondrian's world. As the 20th century progressed, art became less about expressing beauty and more about debasing its observer. The images sought to appeal not just to the emotions, but to the carnal nature of man. Eventually, art was used to openly blaspheme the sacred and to mock God. Men used art to express their contempt for the Almighty. Their aim was to destroy the image of God within mankind. While we may be tempted to laugh at or ridicule such men, Schaeffer warns us not to become so callous. He says in The God Who Is There, these paintings, these poems, these demonstrations which we have been talking about are the expression of men who are struggling with their appalling lostness. If you feel like this has been informative, please remember to like the video. And if you want to be aware of any future videos that may come out in this series, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you have any questions or you want to make a comment, I'd love to discuss that with you. Just leave a comment in the comment section below. Thank you for watching, and may you always be prepared to answer for the hope that you have in Jesus Christ.